All right, let's switch topics now and look at some birds. Groundbreaking new research from a Southern Illinois University Carbondale professor and his colleague looked at how light pollution impacts birds. To do so, they had to pull data in a totally new way, and their findings shocked them. So, here to tell us all about this research is Brent Pease, an assistant professor in SIU's School of Forestry and Horticulture. Brent, thank you so much for being here with us today. Can we start with the short answer? What did you find? How does light and pollution impact birds?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So, we found that in areas with the light pollution, birds were singing earlier in the morning and later in the evening. Basically, almost to the tune of an hour longer a day for birds exposed to light pollution at night.
An hour. That seems maybe insignificant to humans, but is that pretty significant to birds?
Yeah. So we kind of think about this as an extra hour of activity in someone's day, and some of that's extended into the night, and that's just on average. We had 600 species. Some of their day was extended by 2 hours, some a little bit less. But I know that when I lose an hour of sleep, I'm grumpy. My kids are grumpy. Humans and birds are different, but we have to think that this is impacting the populations to some extent.
Hmm. Well, let's go back to the beginning here and talk about how you conducted this research. And first, you have to tell us about BirdNet. What is this?
Sure. So we were using a data source from, here's another bird name, birdweather.com. And birdweather is a data set that has sound recorders recording 24/7 a day that are all powered by BirdNet. And BirdNet is a image classification model. It's a convolutional neural net machine learning algorithm that has been trained to classify over 6,000 bird species across the world just based on their vocalizations. So a bird vocalizes, it basically turns that into a picture. And that picture then gets passed over to the software and says, hey, which bird species looks like this? But it's just their vocalization. It's called a spectrogram, and that's powered by folks out of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology.
So basically, like what trail cameras have shown us about mammals, you're finding out through BirdNet now for birds?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of think we're at this point where 25 years ago or so, trail cameras showed us how mammals were behaving 24/7. Well, now that we have these sound recorders all across the world, and they're recording for 24/7, and we're able to identify vocalization detections in real time, we're now learning how birds are behaving 24/7 as well. And one of those, as you're mentioning, one of those key findings we found is that it's really affecting kind of their behavior on a daily basis, how these light pollutions is extending their day, and what that might mean for bird conservation moving forward.
Had nobody done this before? Were you guys the first people to look at the data this way?
Yeah, this was a huge data set. We had 180 million bird vocalization detections, which is just a large data set whether you're in wildlife science or some other field. No one really had access to such a data set before or was aware of such a data set before, so no one was able to do this on this scale. For a few decades we've known that light pollution is impacting some wildlife species. Many folks are familiar, particularly up in Chicago region, with migratory species being disoriented during their flight patterns at night. We know that it's impacting human health, but we weren't really able to analyze this type of light pollution problem at a global scale until recently.
And can I ask, why did you choose to focus on light pollution first? You mentioned some of the issues that people are seeing, but why was it so important to you?
Light pollution is a growing concern for human health. We get told to not look at our phones at night. There's some evidence that it's impacting school children who are exposed to a lot of lights at night. It's it's a global issue. It impacts over 25% of Earth's surface and over 80% of the world's population, and 99% of US populations and European populations are exposed to light pollution. So we have this pervasive issue. It's certainly another source of pollution that the world is dealing with. And we wanted to further explore this question, and this data set really lends itself well to addressing this question.
All right, so let's talk about what comes out of this data set. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it a neutral thing that birds are staying up later? Or is that something you guys still have to figure out?
Right. When we first found this result, we kind of automatically went to a negative result. We thought it was going to be a big issue for wildlife populations, but we're actually not quite sure. As I mentioned earlier, on one hand, a loss of an hour of sleep or increased activity in a day is certainly going to result in, or likely going to result in increased caloric needs or increased caloric intake. So that means more food for birds. They have to find more food, just more energy during already demanding time period of their life during the breeding season. On the other hand, they have an extra hour of the day. That means more food, that means feeding more young, that means more productivity potentially. There's some interesting research a few years ago that found American robins feeding their young at like 2 in the morning in these light polluted areas because it was so bright outside. So and there's evidence that there's increased fledgling survival, increased nesting success. So these are all things that would be good for a wildlife population, but it's still a little too early to tell. We're not sure what's going to happen. You really got to zoom in. Right now, we're just studying their behavior through their vocalizations, but we would need to get closer, smaller wildlife population studies, studying the survival, the nesting success in these light polluted areas to understand really how it's impacting wildlife populations across the globe.
And the research continues. Brent, thank you so much for joining us and for your time today. I just think this is fascinating. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks. I appreciate it.
For you guys at home, we have linked to Brent's full research at WQAD.com. You can find it underneath the As Seen on TV tab at the top of the homepage.